Hello, everybody. We are heading into day 4, the final day of the Democratic National Convention. Tonight, we officially nominate Vice President Kamala Harris to be our nominee for President of the United States. Let's dive in.
Hi, Keenan. It's great to be here.
Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Well, we've almost made it. What a week. Brian, you look how I feel. Wow. How do people do this for a living? I do not understand. So before
Yes.
we sort of dive into our Cub Reporter reports, because as some of you may know, Jen and Brian and I are actually here in Chicago. It's been we've been here now for about 17 years. And we'll be going home tomorrow. I'm sure to find the outside world altered, because this is not the real world at all. It's been amazing on so many levels, but I kind of want to see how it's playing to those of you who are watching from a distance. Norm, it's we're seeing a lot of the chaos, and I mean, it doesn't feel like it's bad chaos, but I think that's just the nature of any convention. But again, remember, it's been a month since President Biden passed the torch to Kamala Harris. So I'm curious what your sense is, whether or not, and the degree to which they pulled this off.
I'm gobsmacked by how well it has gone. For somebody just watching, and I'm usually at conventions and I understand that element of chaos, but just watching, last night was as perfect a night as I can remember for a convention. The previous night as well. The number of speeches that just blew you away last night, Oprah was one, certainly, but even having Wes Moore and Pete Buttigieg come on as veterans right before we saw Tim Walz. Having Tim's speech and what now is going to be the most viral meme, I think, coming out of the convention, which is his son Gus. And that is going to be, I think, a reflection of an incredible nuclear family. And there again, the contrast with Trump and Vance is just absolutely striking. The musical performances, having John Legend and Sheila E. play Prince right before we had his fellow Minnesotan come on. All of that, I think, came off incredibly well, and the themes came off incredibly well. What's astonishing is that all of this was pulled together in just a short period of time with what should have been chaos, but so far has proven to be anything else. I'll say one other thing, and we may come back to this. What I've been a little bit puzzled by is the lack of focus on the danger to fundamental democracy that Donald Trump provides. We've had the references to Project 2025, and they've been very good ones. But we've had very little on what would happen if the Insurrection Act were invoked on day one, on Trump as a dictator, on the likelihood that the election, if he wins it, would be our last election. I'm not sure I know why, and maybe it's because they want to project more of this positive joyful tribute. But as we talked about, we've seen all of these speakers talk about how everybody's got to get out to vote and we've got to go do the yard signs and knock on the doors. We haven't had nearly enough, I would say, focus on the voter suppression and voter intimidation that's going to take place, on guarding against that, on making sure that you're not just registering people, but making sure that they can turn out and actually vote. The purging of voter rolls that we're seeing, which is in Ohio, the loathsome Frank LaRose, the Secretary of State, undoubtedly purging a lot of people who are legitimate voters. I'd like to see a little bit more of that, but frankly, that is a quibble compared to how well everything else has gone.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Norm. What I will say is that, and I know this is a function of how late that this process started. Usually conventions are planned 4 years in advance, and they've had probably 3 weeks. So yes, we are going to make some allowances, but some of the merch is substandard and there's not enough of it. But that aside, what we've seen has seemed flawless. Although I agree with you, we've talked about this a lot. We need to find a sweet spot. We can't just only talk about the dangers presented. We need to be mocking Donald and the ridiculous surrogates he has. But we can't just do one or the other. It has to be both. And we have tonight left. I think there does need to be a little bit more gravity injected into the proceedings in the sense of the danger presented to us. But again, sort of boiling things down to their essence in a way that comes across in an accessible way is also important. So Waj, here's a clip and then you can comment on the other side.
All right, good. Now,
goodness.
Becky, you're married, correct?
I am. Me and my wife have been together for about 8 years.
Oh, that's amazing. Very, very cute.
Thanks.
But I have got some bad news for you.
I hate that.
On page 584, Project 2025 calls for the elimination of protections for LGBTQ plus Americans. So yeah, right back to the Stone Age. I'm afraid so.
Right back to the Stone Age. That's terrible.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Becky, for being here and making that wonderful point. All right, next up, we have Nirvana. Nirvana, are you with us? And your people are with us as well? All right, good. Now, Nirvana, I understand that you are on insulin to manage your diabetes, yes?
Yes, and thanks to President Biden and Vice President Harris, I only pay $35 a month for my insulin.
That is great. That is great. But on page 465, Project 2025 calls for millions of people like yourself to pay more for prescription drugs like insulin.
Why?
Why? Well, I guess maybe to help Big Pharma make more money that they can donate to Republican politicians, I assume.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, unfortunately, it does make sense. All right, let's talk to Anita. Anita, are you there? Yes. Hello, Anita.
Hello.
And Anita, what do you do for a living?
I'm an OBGYN who delivers babies and does surgery.
An OBGYN. She is an OBGYN that delivers babies. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, yeah. It's bad news, isn't it?
It sure is. On page 459, Project 2025 resurrects a law from the 1800s called the Comstock Act to ban abortion nationwide and throw healthcare providers in jail.
Oh my God. That is awful.
Yes, it is awful. All right, let's do one more. Is Sharia with us? Sharia, are you there?
Hey, Keenan, I'm here.
Yes, Sharia, I love it. All right, let's talk to you. I understand that you work for the federal government?
Yes, sir. I'm in the United States Department of Education. I'm a proud civil servant and a proud union president.
She works for the Department of Education and she's a proud civil servant. Well, unfortunately for you, on page 78, Project 2025 calls for President Trump to purge the civil service of everyone who isn't a MAGA loyalist. Are you a MAGA loyalist?
Now, Keenan, absolutely not.
I'm just asking. I mean, you might as well be, because also page 319 calls for the complete elimination of the Department of Education. There's a bunch of stuff in here, but that's all we have time for at the moment. Just remember, everything that we just talked about is very real. It is in this book. You can read it online at kamalaharris.com/Project 2025. And most importantly, you can stop it from ever happening by electing Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
Mary, you're muted.
Okay, I did not mute myself. Anyway, that was cool. What did you think of that? And do you think that the Democrats are doing an effective enough job of highlighting Project 2025?
Oh, so great minds. Right before you played that clip, and as Norm was talking, I said, "Hey, that Kenan Thompson did a great segment," and then you played the segment, and to answer your question, that segment coincidentally was the one segment where my wife, who's a doctor, refers to herself as a complete political layperson. She was just walking across the TV and saw that entire clip that you just showed, and she said, especially when it came to the woman talking about the pricing the cap of insulin, especially when she saw the OBGYN doctor, she said out loud, "Oh, this is really smart. This is how you can communicate the dangers of this to people." And then she turned to me and she said, "Department of Education, what are they going to do?" And I said, "Just wait. They'll tell you that they're going to eliminate the entire Department of Education." What's so interesting, then my wife turned to me and she said, "They put this all out there? Why?" And I said, the reason why they put this all out there is because they were so arrogant. They were so determined that they would win. And because they're so out of touch and extreme, they thought Project 2025, the way it is presented and published, they thought, oh, this is very palatable to the American public, right? Like a Bond villain, they literally put this out for the past year and a half for the world to see. And they literally kept these receipts and breadcrumbs for the Democrats to use. And as we have shown and said on your show for the past year, for the love of God, Democrats, just read Project 2025. Just read it. We've said it on this program. Just read it word for word and tell the American public what's at stake. And they're doing it every single day of the convention. And so it's a balancing act, Mary. The question that you asked, Norm, I can tell you, watching from home, it's coming off quite seamless. I was there in 2016. It looks very chaotic, but you see an excellent production. You see an efficient machine. You're seeing this is how whoever did this should run the Academy Awards or Golden Globes, right? Make it on point, make it snappy, make it peppy. You have a lot to convey in about 3 hours, and each speaker is doing their job. So what they're doing in particular is they're letting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz be this unifying positive force that is pushing the country forward. Then they're bringing out the old heads, the Hall of Famers, Obamas and Bill Clinton, to be like, we've got nothing left to lose. Yeah. Here's all of our hard-earned equity. We're going to put on the brass knuckles with the tan suit, with the smile, and we're just going to roast and eviscerate Donald. And I think Bill Clinton had some great jabs yesterday in a largely improvised speech. I saw Brian's tweet. I'm like, I think he's improvising it. This is old school Bill. The fact that he was reading off the notes. And Brian, I think I saw your tweet where you said, I'm looking up close in the last 10 minutes. He hasn't looked at the teleprompter, right?
About 15 minutes of it was improvised.
Old school Bill Clinton, right? And Michelle eviscerated, Obama eviscerated. Tim Walz comes up there, and we mentioned this, and I think it bears repeating because there's certain takeaways each night. You know, there's Oprah, there's Pete Buttigieg, but at the end of the day, there's like 2 or 3 highlight moments that get seared into the consciousness, the ones that really last. And for me, and I think for most people yesterday, it was Tim Walz taking the stage, and then the cutaway shot, as Norm mentioned and you mentioned, to Gus Walz, his son, who gets up and applauds, cries, and he said, "That's my dad." And I tweeted immediately a version of Tim Walz wins in life, right? Like, even if he loses, and he can't lose, by the way, but even if they lose, and they can't lose, as a dad, I can tell you that if I ever have a moment in my life where my family's there, my wife and my 3 kids, and it's public, and my children and my wife look at me with pride, and one of my kids says, "That's my dad," like literally the angel of death can visit me at that moment and be like, "Waj, it's time." I'm like, "I've done my job. I will die now. I will die happy." And I feel like Tim Walz in particular, right ahead of Kamala Harris tonight, what he brings forward is not just this loving family, Mary, but I think from the perspective of men, especially straight men, in the past 9 years, this rise of toxic masculinity, the Andrew Tates, the Joe Rogans, the Donalds, the cruelty, the meanness, right? Tim Walz says, "I'm a hunter, I'm a football coach, I'm a dad, I'm from the Midwest, right? I love my wife. And by the way, my children love me. And this is a way to be a man, to be loving, to be empathetic, to care, to give back." And I think that model is exceedingly powerful for a lot of young men and for a lot of men who are desperately seeking for that type of representation, that type of normalcy. I think that will be the major takeaway. And, you know, they have kind of paved the ground for Kamala tonight just to stick the landing. And I think she will. And the last thing I'll say is I hope we have enough time. It has to mention, I have to mention this, but later, about the need for representation for the uncommitted movement and why there's a lot of pain right now. But I'm sure we'll have time to talk about that.
Okay, I apologize. I'm having a very hard time hearing everybody. I'm not sure what is wrong, but I think I got enough of it to respond a little bit.
I was brilliant, Mary. Don't worry.
No, I know it was brilliant because it's you. So there you go. I think that they have done a very good job of creating permission structures, and we can see that in the not the specific speakers, but the classifications of speakers. You know, Republicans who are supporting the ticket, and men who don't think you need to be a macho, misogynistic creep in order to be considered a man. So that's all good. And I want to go to Daniel because I want to, again, just get a sense of what the people who aren't here are feeling about how things have gone. So Daniel, what has stood out to you so far, and what might you be looking for, or what do you think what are you hoping they might focus on tonight? And I just also want to make a really quick point about the production values. It kind of reminds me of the January 6th committee hearings. They actually hired a Hollywood producer to make sure that they got it right, and they did. And I have to guess that they hired some total pro to put this on, you know, because it's essentially like a big budget blockbuster that had to be done in 2 weeks. So some mastermind is done. Anyway, Daniel.
Yeah, yes, I'm here, as you all know, and maybe others don't know. I'm in the heartland here of the Republicans. I live in a county, Northwest Florida, where it's 75% for Donald twice. So I don't have a particular polling, but I do. My son, he's a good barometer because a lot of his friends, or all of his friends' parents, are very supportive of Trump, and I'm looking at his reaction, and I think the January 6th, the real images that were shown there, because I think that's kind of been lost. I don't think people remember. Some people don't remember how violent it was, and I think that was important. I think when Lieutenant Governor from Georgia spoke, I mean, that was really, I think, compelling for people where I live, who are, I'm a former Republican. I mean, people who are independents, who are Republicans that don't like Trump. I think he did a great job of talking to those people. I thought Bill Clinton did a good job also of talking about, talking to people in areas of the rural areas of New York and Arkansas. And, like you all are there, you all are where everyone is really, they're on board. And it's amazing to watch how fun and how active things are going. But like Bill Clinton said, we can't, I think he said it based on personal experience. He said, we can't be complacent. 2016, there was complacency. And there's a lot of excitement now, and I think that's fabulous. We have the candidates we can really get behind, but I think the reality of it is that those types of, getting people who are going to appeal to independents and Republicans I think that's really, for where I live and the people I talk to, the people that I think are persuadable, that's really compelling. I think the speeches are, as you said, the producing is great. They're speaking quickly, shortly, to the point, with the exception of, President Clinton, who I'd had the fortunate time to work with, and for him to speak that length was actually fairly short for him. But I think the actors, the stars that are there, the efficiency of it, just the funness of it, the music, I think it's done brilliantly in terms of production value. But in terms of the issues that I'm looking for, because of like my son, he's 15, says it's only going to be a few people that make a difference in the election. I said, yes, everyone makes a difference, but it is going to be a handful of people, and I think they've really done a good job of trying to be people out there who can speak to those, undecided people, because there aren't that many, but I think they did a good job of that, in my opinion.
I heard about 30% of that. So there's something clearly wrong with my audio. I'm going to hand this off to Jen, and then log off and see if I can fix this problem. So thank you, everybody, for your patience. And I will do my best to be back as soon as possible. So Jen, over to you.
Thanks, Mary. She's still here, so we can't talk about her. Let's wait for a moment. No kidding. So Daniel, I want to follow up with one question, then I'm going to go over to Brian and Norm. So you are in Florida, and you mentioned your son's, you're using your son as a bit of a proxy for what his friends' parents might think. You're also somewhat close or in the same state as the Villages. And from outside of Florida, we're getting a lot of images of people from the Villages who are like in golf carts and holding signs supporting Kamala Harris. Is that an exaggeration, or do you get the sense that some people who were previously either independent or leaning Republican or Republican have now become Harris supporters?
I think there obviously is something there, but I think what I really looked at, we had some pretty monumental elections here in Florida this week, where Ron DeSantis he really pointed to getting these Moms for Liberty folks on these school boards, and they lost across the board. So although that is, DeSantis folks, I think Floridians are starting to catch on to this book banning that emanates from the MAGA, and so I look at the elections, and yes, I think the Villages certainly had a lot of folks show up, and the polling in Florida, it's much closer than it was a few months ago. I mean, we got a shot. Maybe Rick Scott maybe lose at some point, but no, I think he has never lost. He's always won very, very narrow margins. But the Villages is further south of me. But yes, there has been. I'm more confident about will we win Florida. I'm a realist. I think it's going to be difficult, but I think they're going to have to work harder here in Florida than they thought. I think these elections that happened this week with these radical school board members across the state, DeSantis's power is dwindling. I think we're going to do better in Florida than I thought a few months ago. And so
that's great. Yeah. I appreciate that from on the ground. It's helpful, even if Florida won't flip right in that way, because it's sort of uncertain. There's going to be more resources poured into there and not elsewhere. Brian, you are literally in the arena. I see it behind you.
That's just a picture.
Shot you took? Did you take that yesterday?
That was last night as Tim Walz walked up to speak. There's a lot of signs behind me that say Coach Walz, and
amazing.
He won my favor when he said that he ran a 44 defense, because that's what I ran as a defensive coordinator. And one thing you got to admire about him is, and what people really don't understand, some of the best people I've ever worked with in my life are football players, because they understand what it means to be a part of something bigger than yourself. everybody I've ever known that's played pro football and also been a soldier will tell you that the closest you will get to war is being on a football field and battling with guys. So I really appreciated that last night. We're here, and I got to tell you, Jen, I want to unpack a couple of things that we've kind of glossed over that we may not have talked about. First of all, there's no truth to the rumor that Donald Trump is a deep state plant sent to unite the Democratic Party and destroy the GOP. He's just that incompetent. And that's come across. That's one of the central themes that they've unpacked here today, which angers the MAGA members. But at the same time, some of the major themes that have been in this arena are about the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. And let's remember what these things are. What you're looking at when you're looking at a convention are the foot soldiers for the party. Those people, those delegates are going to go back to their home states, energized. They're the ones who sacrifice their time at home, who often work for free, who take time off from work to organize the infrastructure for the race ahead. And the key job of any convention is to energize your crowd to do it. And they have been extremely effective here, doing this much more effective than I've ever seen the Democrats. The last time I've seen them this kind of united was in 2008. And I would say the three highest energy conventions would be this one, then 2008, and 1996 when Al Gore got everyone to spontaneously dance the Macarena. And then you go to the roll call vote here, which was done with a DJ and Lil Jon. That set a precedent that I think will change calls in the future. But having watched that, which was choreographed, and there were some spontaneous moments, but you compare that to 1996, and over the last 28 years, the Democrats have actually learned how to dance. And so that brought a thrill to my heart.
Can I just go back to something you said? You mentioned Coach Walz. Can I just play this for you and get your comment, and you can say the next thing? Okay.
Sure.
But not everyone has that same sense of responsibility. Some folks just don't understand what it takes to be a good neighbor. Take Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Their Project 2025 will make things much, much harder for people who are just trying to live their lives. They spent a lot of time pretending they know nothing about this. But look, I coached high school football long enough to know, and trust me on this, when somebody takes the time to draw up a playbook, they're going to use it. And we know if these guys get back in the White House, they'll start jacking up the costs on the middle class. They'll repeal the Affordable Care Act. They'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And they will ban abortion across this country, with or without Congress. Here's the thing. It's an agenda nobody asked for. It's an agenda that serves nobody except the richest and the most extreme amongst us. And it's an agenda that does nothing for our neighbors in need. Is it weird? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's also wrong. And it's dangerous. It's not just me saying so. It's Trump's own people. They were with him for 4 years. They're warning us that the next 4 years will be much, much worse.
I love that you played that clip. And one of the reasons why that was important, Jen, is that the beginning comments were actually ad-libbed. Some of the best moments in this, this is one of the things you get as an advantage is sitting where we sit in the press, being able to see the speaker and the teleprompter. So you see what they've written. By the way, so everyone should know, the best speech writers belong to the Obamas. The worst belong to poor President Biden. I often used to think it was a stutter because I didn't get to see the teleprompter. But after watching his speech the other night, and he did fantastic, by the way, A few moments where he stumbled was because they were poorly written sentences. And I blame the speechwriter now instead of Biden. But to your point, what Walz did, what some of the best moments on the floor have been ad-lib moments. This has been a well choreographed. And Mary, to your point earlier, much of it was 4 years in planning, but they brought in the last month someone from Hollywood to stage this when they realized what they were dealing with. And so they took the skeleton of what they had planned and they grafted this over it. And they did a very, very good job. The speeches have been well written and for the most part, well followed by the speakers. And what I said earlier was, and thanks for reminding me of it, Bill Clinton calls himself the great explainer. There are two things that they're trying to hit their soldiers with when you're sitting there in that arena. One is emotionally, I want you involved, help out the party. And they've united the party. The other part is intellectually telling you why. And last night, that's why Bill Clinton was he didn't get, the great applause and screaming lines, but the man went through and the great explainer and gave you good logical reasons why things are awry. And that resonated when I was speaking with Chuck Schumer, when I was speaking with Pelosi and with that group, and then with the supporters on the floor, all of them, it was like a light bulb went on at one point in time going, yeah, that's why. Emotionally, they were there. Intellectually, Bill Clinton took them that extra step and got them engaged. And I'll end with this. If you don't understand the energy that you're seeing, and it does need to translate to votes, and they do have problems ahead, as Norm said. And Norm, one of the reasons why they don't talk about the voter suppression and all that stuff is because, again, this is a time to energize the folks who've got to go out and do that fight. Those explanations don't exactly translate to the television audience or to the people they're trying to get energized. Those are things that are going to come in directives following the convention to the state delegations. But when you go back and you see Chuck Schumer, who usually, and I'm just going to, I'm not going to gild the lily as Clinton said, but usually babbles like a cicada. I mean, he was backstage talking with reporters, and I'd never seen him more animated. I've never seen him more succinct, and I've never seen him more engaged. So for that reason alone, unless the Democrats really screw this up, and there was a party last night where Eric Swalwell was holding, and the one that Jamie Raskin held the night before. I've gone to these parties after conventions, nights before, and usually they're droll, drab affairs, and that's not the case. The Democrats are well aware of the fight they have ahead of them and how close it can be, and yet they're all taking the happy warrior approach. I've never, ever seen the Democrats that united. Now, whether it holds together after the election, I don't know. But they're all united for one thing, and that's to make sure that Donald Trump never steps foot in the White House again. And by the way, at the end of the day, with more registered Democrats than Republicans, if you get the Democrats who don't vote up off the couch that J.D. Vance may have soiled, and you get them out to vote, those people are the ones that can make a difference in even some of the states. And what you were talking about earlier, Daniel, in Florida, there are now states that Donald Trump's going to have to work that he may have thought he had won. So
yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I think that's one of the things, Brian, is that
very effective. That's the last thing I'll say. It's a very effective so far convention, and and
Harris is providing the long tail. They're the coattails, I should say. If we have a Democratic senatorial candidate within the margin of error in Texas, and again, to Norm's point in the chat, Texas is the the one of the worst states when it comes to voter suppression. So we can't get too happy, but it does place enormous stress on the Republicans' resources, in large part because many of them have gone to pay Donald's legal fees, which are exorbitant. But Norm, one of the things that feels different from anything we've seen in the past is the fact that regardless of who's speaking, there are talking points that everybody is weaving into their remarks. The way Democrats finally are talking about LGBTQ plus rights, everybody should be able to love who they love. The way they're talking about abortion rights as health care, totally dispensing with the egregious language that the Republicans basically were allowed to use and that other people used for decades, allowing themselves to be labeled pro-life, which was detrimental to our ability to commandeer that issue, which we've now been able to do since the overturning of Roe. We're just talking about things differently, aren't we, Norm?
Absolutely, and I think your point is a critical one. Tim Walz's speech was about freedom. He is trying to take back that term and the concept, which has been hijacked by Republicans, and I think did an extraordinarily effective job on Bill Clinton's speech. And Bill Clinton is conversational. A lot of the others are, speech giving. But there's an important takeaway from that. As he talked about Donald Trump, don't focus on the lies, focus on the eyes. And I think that is a great line, which we will hear repeated many times. A couple of other points, going back to what we were talking about with Gus Walz. I want to read a tweet from a journalist named Rick Ellis. I don't cry easily, but as the dad of a teenage son with autism, ADHD, and anxiety issues, watching Tim Walz's 17-year-old son, who has a nonverbal learning disorder, ADHD, and anxiety disorder, standing up crying and pointing to the stage, telling everybody, that's my dad, just gutted me. And I think, we're going to have to be very careful not to traumatize this kid as he moves more and more into a larger spotlight. A disgusting group of pieces of shit on the right are already attacking him and attacking these kids. And it doesn't surprise me, but, once again, the idea that these people are pro-life or call themselves pro-life when they are effectively pro-death. By the way, the Missouri Supreme Court just snatched away an agreement that a judge had with somebody on death row who is supposed to be executed in a month, and basically put it back on the time clock for him to be executed. He has basically had a powerful case for his innocence. The deal was that he would get life without parole, even though he still believes he's innocent. And these are the pro-life people. They're pro-death. So, we're in a different place than we were before. I want to make another point, which is as a native Minnesotan. And I, tweeted last night, I've never been so proud to be a Minnesotan. Minnesota's history is actually fairly checkered. If you read the just terrific biography of Hubert Humphrey that came out a couple of months ago, the racism in Minnesota back in the 1920s. If you go to the African American Museum here in Washington, there is a photo of a lynching in Duluth in the 1920s, which is a picture of a bunch of kids and others celebrating it as if they were at the circus. And I know from my own family's experience in Minnesota that there was racism and anti-Semitism and worse. The Republican Party in Minnesota, when I grew up, was a model of a respectable center-right problem-solving party with enormous heroes. Early on, it moved to the cult crazy radicalism that's there now. But what we've seen is the Democratic Party, called the Democratic Farmer Labor Party in Minnesota, has risen to the occasion. All of those things that Tim Walz accomplished as governor occurred because for the first time in decades, Minnesota had a Democratic House and Senate by narrow margins that enacted these pieces of legislation like free breakfast and lunch for all the kids that are popular everywhere, but are being called communist by Donald Trump and others. And Minnesota now, I think, is going to be seen as a model for how you come out of the ugliness of the George Floyd murder and its aftermath, how you come out of all of the tensions and the difficulties and the tribalism that we have seen and emerge to do good things for people. And that is a blessing.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully it will be the beginning of that spreading. And, you know, with the energy and the coattails, who knows? I mean, we're hearing that this is increasing Sherrod Brown's chances of keeping his seat. You know, I think it's going to make it much easier in Pennsylvania and other swing states. And that's all to the good, because Daniel, this is not just about winning an election. This is about making sure we never do this again. I mean, the stakes are still the stakes. As good as we feel, as energized as we are, we can't, you know, we won in 2020 and it was like, oh, hooray, with that, we're done with that. Well, no, we were not done with that. And we still aren't. And I just want to lighten the mood a little bit. I want to play this from Hakeem Jeffries.
It will not be easy, which brings me to you know who. Donald Trump is like an old boyfriend who you broke up with, but he just won't go away. He has spent the last 4 years spinning the block, trying to get back into a relationship with the American people. Bro, we broke up with you for a reason.
Yes, we did. We're still trying to, though. I mean, go away, please. But it seems like, I don't know. It's been quiet on the other side this week, hasn't it? But
Low energy.
Yeah. Well,
actually, well, it's been quiet and he's been pathetic. I don't know if you knew, Mary, but it was so small and uneventful that it really hasn't, you know, sort of risen up or bubbled up into much of the media.
Did you just do an Obama there, Jen, being small? I mean,
yeah, but what I'm saying is Donald actually had a rally yesterday that was so insignificant, just like him, that not many people have been talking about it. And he's really, it's like he really needs one of those dementia tests again. If you listen, I loaded up a clip when you weren't looking about what he was saying.
Okay.
And I mean, I can play it if you want, since probably no one heard him.
Let's hang on to that for
Okay.
a second, because I just want to get Daniel's take on the stakes and, you know, what we're still dealing with here.
Yes, I mean, it's because of just my geographic area where I live, the stakes. I mean, these things that they've started, you know, that the banning books, the just look at what Trump did when he first started with the Muslim ban and all those things that are just trickling down, and they aren't going to go away. And what has Donald done recently? Look at what he tweeted yesterday about I'm Jewish, and what he tweeted about Josh Shapiro, and saying that how he is not, you know, denigrating his Jewishness and saying that Donald's done all the best person ever for Israel. I mean, that's who he is, and I think that the stakes are just magnitude goes up and up, and I see it with these school board races and these actions taken here in Florida. But I did want to point out that one thing that was kind of mentioned was that when President Clinton, when he said, and he had to check it 3 times, which we don't talk about enough, when he ran, he said, it's the economy, stupid. It's the economy, stupid. 51 million new jobs, 50 million while Democrats are president. And that is, we need to be saying that more. If you look at, historically, the economy does better when Democrats are president. It's a fact. We need to be saying that more. This is about, you know, people being able to do better economically. Social issues as well are critically important, but Donald Trump is not good for the American economy. He's actually, and I think I'm still wondering whether he is a plan for the Democratic Party, because if you look at what he's done to the Republican Party since he's been a Republican, he's done so much more for the Democrats.
Yeah.
And we can't be too cocky this time, obviously, but I think President Clinton, from being a Southern Democrat, understanding, the middle issues these issues with Governor Walz's son, it is disgusting what people are saying about his son on the right. I mean, and to do that, these issues that he may or might not have, they are not kids who are parents are Republicans, or these affect all sorts of kids, and kids who have friends who may be having issues. And it just, that's how low they are to attack this kid for showing his emotion. And where did it start? We all remember Donald giving that speech where he's imitating the disabled reporter. It trickles down, and I'm glad to see that, I think by his reactions, which have not been much, he doesn't know what to do with Kamala Harris. He doesn't know what to do with him.
No, he
does not. He had a playbook for Joe Biden for years. I drive around, I see these signs say, "Let's go Brandon." I'm like, why are there still "Let's go Brandon" stickers in all these trucks?
Well, the Palestinian protesters that were there, we're still talking about Biden. That was, I mean, there has been no adaptation to what is actually going on inside that building in many cases. And Mary, you may know this better than me, but Donald Trump is not only, the low energy level is not only because he's facing someone that he may lose to, but I spoke with Michael Cohen last night, his former fixer, who believes that Donald becomes fixated on things that come onto his calendar. And September 18th is looming large on his calendar now, and he's obsessing about the fact that he may be sentenced to prison. He may not be remanded until after the election, but that fear is also driving him, and the understanding that if he is a convicted felon that is sentenced to prison, he will lose more Republican votes.
Yeah, but right. He doesn't know what to do. Waj, this is a guy who's been besieged on all sides for a long time. Let's not give him any credit. He is not a plant. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He's flailing. He's desperate. He's failing. And I think one of the reasons is that he's actually never had to do anything. You pointed out the weird idea, or how weird it is that the Republicans actually published Project 2025. And I think part of it was because they thought, oh, it's 900 pages. Nobody's going to read it. It's just going to look like this serious tome. And look at how serious we are and intellectual we are. We have this platform so complex that it needs 900 pages to be laid out. Like we're all idiots and we can't read it and give people the Cliff Note version of it to make them understand how dangerous it is. But I think it's also because if Donald Trump has taught the Republican Party anything, you can get away with all of it, no matter how racist, no matter how anti-Semitic, no matter how misogynistic, because he's been doing that. He has, from the very beginning, pushed the envelope. If he gets away with it, he pushes it further. So we go from, they're bad people coming into our country to 8 years later, we're going to put them in concentration camps. So why wouldn't it work for the party? But I think what we're finally seeing is that it's not holding true anymore, because he is so besieged and he doesn't know where to turn. And it's wonderful.
It works until it doesn't. Right. It's a shtick that entertains until it bores. It's a vaudeville act that is novel until it becomes stale. And a carnival barker's only rule is that no matter how skilled or least skilled a carnival barker is, every carnival barker has to be entertaining. And what happens to a carnival barker who ceases being entertaining? They become irrelevant and obsolete, and then they die. It's a death before dying. And that's what we're seeing with Donald, is a death before dying, a living wake. An elderly man, 78 years old, who's desperate, who has no new bag of tricks, who's dipping into 2008, 2012, 2016, and the majority has moved on. And the majority has first and foremost moved on from President Biden, who handed the baton down to Kamala Harris. Their entire battle plan was against Biden. He's old. I am less old. Now they've had a month to pivot. And what we talked about on your program, Mary, was I knew they were out of tricks because it was 2 weeks into it and they still couldn't come up with a landing punch. Kamala turning black. She's
Kamala is
Indian.
my personal
Yeah.
favorite. Because
Kamala.
what?
What are you talking about? And the thing is, because the bar is so low, we literally have no idea if he's trying to mock her or if he doesn't know how to spell. Like that's literally like
Or
I'm
he
like
was working on a cheeseburger.
Or both.
because I was there, I'm like, maybe he doesn't know how to spell her name. The same man who misspelled Pole and doesn't understand what asylum means. And the fact that Bill Clinton, right? Like he could have hit harder, but he's like, I got nothing with Hannibal Lecter. I'm trying to figure it out, but I don't even know why he's obsessed. So he's become this type of rambling, pathetic, gaudy gauche of a man who's now the oldest person running for president. But the problem is with this cult, because, like you said, the cult has gotten away with it for so many years without accountability. Arrogance can also make you sloppy. And I think this is what we're witnessing is sloppiness, laziness, lack of agility. And so Project 2025 was, we're going to win. We have the Supreme Court. We're going against Biden. We see the polls. What are you going to do about it? Cry harder, libs. And the libs were like, we're going to replace Biden with Harris. We're going to bring in Walz. We're going to actually put on the brass knuckles for once. We're going to fight and we're going to inject joy. And people are like, ooh, I like this. And then secondly, what they did was we're actually not going to be, when they go, what is it was Michelle Obama. We love her, but she infamously said, when they go low, we go high. Michelle Obama's like, I'm going to go to the top rope and jump off with a flying elbow. Yep. And that's what you've seen in this DNC, right? And the Republicans are not prepared for it. And another thing I think it bears mentioning, because a reason why Mary Trump Media started is because of our kind of mutual disgust and sadness with corporate media failing to do its job. I don't know if you saw this interview yesterday with Jake Tapper and JD Vance. Maybe he was tired. It was like 4 minutes of JD Vance just lying, not a single pushback, not one. It was. I mean, I'm not trying to bash on Tapper, but he deserves it, man. Like,
I am.
I will.
What are you doing? And so I think the fact that Democrats aren't playing anymore by corporate media rules, and they've realized the majority is finally with them. I think Donald JD Vance was the worst pick. JD Vance has the lowest approval rating of any VP candidate of the past 40 years. He's gone from negative to more negative, folks. And so I believe he's stuck, which is also why bringing it back full circle with the time that we have left, with what Norm said, look at Georgia. I'm sure we're going to talk about it. They're going to try to voter suppress. He's trying to pack the courts. He's trying to pack the electoral commissions. They're looking for small, these states of Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, where they're thinking that, okay, if Harris wins by 10,000, 8,000, we can contest. They're going to resort to cheating. And also, I think what my fear is small pockets of asymmetrical violence, based upon what we saw in 2016, 2020, this type of growing movement of right-wing extremists who, if they lose, they will not be beholden to institutions or the rule of law, especially if he gets sentenced in September. So that's just something that, to bring it back full circle, what Norm was talking about, I really hope there's still time, but I think we really need to stress how they are going to cheat.
Yeah, and Jen, we need to wrap up soon, but so I want to give you the last word here. A couple of things, including that one. First of all, I agree with Norm that these things do need to be discussed in this setting. Brian's point is that we don't want to bring anybody down, and I totally agree with that. But there's a way to make this conversation a conversation that's about empowering us. Okay, this is what we need to be vigilant. This is what we can do. We need to be aware of these things. How do we counter them? And then the other thing too, because I think this is a more personal thing. How is it that for all of these years, Donald has been able to not just get away with his own cruelty, but that so many people who support him, who must have children on the spectrum or with physical disabilities or with psychiatric disorders, or who get bullied in school or need school lunch. I mean, or who are veterans or have family members who are veterans. How is it that his supporters continue to turn a blind eye to the fact that he hates them and people they love? I mean, that's sort of the mystery. And I'm kind of hoping, or I'm not hoping, that's the wrong word in this context. I have a feeling that Donald is headed the way of other wannabe dictators. He's going to keep doing what he's doing, and then he's going to fall off a cliff. Hopefully that happens before the election, but I just don't think it's sustainable anymore, especially given the contrast the Democrats are showing us.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if getting the last word, this is like a 30-second clip. I would love for you to see who we are up against, if you're willing for me to play it.
Sure.
Okay.
Every American was safer under President Trump. In fact, the entire world was safer when I sat behind that beautiful Resolute desk in the Oval Office. You know, I heard the other day for the first time.
How about you just
wait, this is
the beautiful Resolute desk. He never said that before. They copy me. When I say we're a nation in decline, guys are copying me. Then they say they shouldn't say that, but they thought the words were beautiful. But they copy me all the time. In that case, it was Republicans that were copying me because they.
Aw.
So-
Wait, it sounded like there were like 3 people there.
It's right. First of all, he is Hannibal Lecter. He is now behind his own plexiglass. Second of all, the Resolute desk. I wish I had coined that, but no. The Resolute desk is what it's fucking called.
Yes, it is.
So the fact that Joe Biden referred to it as a Resolute desk, no, you don't have a trademark on that, Donald. And the idea that he thinks he coined the expression "nation in decline," it's mind-boggling. I am now feeling like the professor that we've heard about, who has, I think, gone unnamed, who knew him at UPenn, who said he was the stupidest student he ever taught. And
I hear he even paid somebody to take his SATs for him.
I heard that someone had that. I heard that someone knew that because they had the audio tape of his sister, the former disgraced federal judge who cheated somebody out of their inheritance. Maybe, Mary.
So weird. Yeah,
So weird.
and she also used to do his homework for him when he was at Fordham because he's stupid.
Anyway, the point is, just because he's stupid doesn't mean he's not dangerous. Even clowns are scary.
I think it's why he's dangerous, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
He has no sense of self-awareness. And I don't understand, the people around him are a combination of sycophants and those who actually don't know that what he's saying doesn't make sense.
Well, and opportunists. And I think the
Yes.
opportunists are the most dangerous because they know he's stupid and he's easily manipulable,
Yes.
just like Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin know that.
Right.
So yeah,
Don't forget the evil ones like Steve Bannon who do know, but are using him for their purposes.
Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
Also on that list. I mean, these are the worst of the worst, and they're why Donald is dangerous. Donald's just a symptom of all of this. He's a useful idiot to them.
Right.
And
Well said.
the more we, and that again, that's why I am very pleased, because 4 years ago, this was not happening. I tried, but nobody wanted to go there because we were still pretending in advance of the 2020 election that everything was normal and it was just another election. We're not there anymore. So it is, the mockery is good. It's cleansing. It's effective, but we need to be vigilant about all of the other dangers you have all explicated so well today. So I can't believe time's up. We're going to have like a 7-hour-long debrief, nerds, next week, because there's still so much to talk about. And honestly, one of the things I'm most fascinated to see is what the response to this week is, because tonight alone, trust me, I know this is a very Donald thing to say, but in this case, it happens to be true. It's going to be like nothing we've ever seen before. So hang on to your hats. And we'll, Jen and Brian and I and Danielle will all be there bringing it to you in person. Yeah, stay tuned. Waj, Norm, Daniel, Brian, Jen, thank you all so much for being here. It's really good to see your faces. And we will be back. I don't know what day it is, but we'll be back.
It's still Thursday all the day long.
Goodness gracious. All right, we'll be back. The nerds will be back on Tuesday. Keep watching Morning Jen every day at the Jen Taub YouTube channel. all and everything else. So we'll see you soon.
Democracy-ish tomorrow.
Subscribe.
Oh my God. Yes, I'm sorry. And
Subscribe.
on Danielle Moody's YouTube channel, we've got Democracy-ish tomorrow. Danielle has her Get Woke segments. Subscribe to both of those channels. It's all under the umbrella of Mary Trump Media because we're growing, and it's all because of all of you watching. So thanks as always for your comments and for being here. Subscribe to this channel too, guys, because it really, really, really does help us, and it doesn't cost anything. So why not? So thanks again. We will see you next week. In the meantime, please stay safe and be kind. See you soon.